Oh no, she's dropped off.
Yeah, glad that's not just me.
Yeah.
Um,
I think we are streaming now, aren't we?
are
Yeah.
we streaming live?
I think we might be.
I can start the presentation for everybody, for anybody that's watching, if we are indeed going live. Shall I do that, Becky? Oh, here we go.
Um,
So sorry, let's try that again. There is one button that I sometimes press by accident that does what just happened. I don't want to tell you it was the first time because it's not the first time. So, hello, and welcome. Good morning. Qualified tutor demos are an opportunity for people who make awesome things that are of service to tutors to get in front of tutors and tutoring professionals and let you guys know what's out there. I know that when I left school, I felt out of things. And I know that when I was a school leader in school, one of my favorite jobs was going out there, finding out what awesome resources they are and there are out there and bringing them back to teachers and tutors, people who are at the chalk face and do not have the headspace to go out exploring. So I love to shop, and that's what I've done for you. Qualified Tutor is about bringing our buying. I think Becky's going to give us a discount code at the end of this session. But really what we like to do is make sure that we bring opportunities to tutors to learn about what's out there, to choose the right resources. And it's always fun to learn what's new. What I love about working with Oxford University Press is that they have old products that are proven by time. There's legacy behind Oxford University, and yet they're creating new things all the time. And this specific collaboration really, really appeals to me because Oxford University Press and White Rose Hub are two of the most credible brands in maths education, and so being able to bring them together, and well, actually they're bringing out science as well, aren't they? So being able to come together and find out what you guys have cooked up for the education space is really, really something of interest. I've been watching the development of White Rose through their collaboration with Power Maths, and now what you've created here, and seeing how they take their approach to pedagogy and making it accessible in different ways is really, really of interest to tutors. So, Will, I think it's you that's presenting to us today. Becky, you're here for moral support and to answer any questions along the way, and hopefully to give us a juicy discount code for qualified tutor members. If you have any questions and you're on YouTube or on LinkedIn, I would ask you please to come and join us on Zoom through Qualified Tutor, because that way I can support you and give you a chance to answer questions. Okay, Will, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Right, I'm going to share my screen. So there's going to be an awkward couple of seconds while I hopefully do that and bring it up. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Amazing. Right. So I'm going to kind of rattle through, I reckon, about 20 minutes where I'm going to talk through the product. Give a bit of background.
I'm going to do my best to interrupt you a lot.
Okay, please do.
If you want.
And I will start by explaining that I'm the head of maths at Oxford University Press, part of the team that's created this product. But I am fairly recently an ex-head teacher of a primary school. So the bulk of my career has been working in schools, working with a lot of tutors actually, as part of the recent National Tutor Service. So employed a lot of tutors in my school through COVID. Very well aware of the amazing job that tutors do and the impact that it can have on raising attainment. So I'm passionate that this product is absolutely suitable for tutors, and I hope you agree. Right.
That was a lovely intro. Thank you. No, really, because sometimes people don't have a context for tutors and the way we work, and so that's really helpful. Thanks.
Good, hopefully. And if there are things that are very tutor specific that you don't feel that are being addressed by what I'm saying, please do interrupt. I'm going to start by sort of presenting where this product came from and a little bit of an insight into what happens in a publisher's. We try and identify a problem. We try and go to the customer and think, what is there in what you do that is not being served by your current products? What is a problem that's pervasive that we think we can help with? And we started with thinking about homework. So this is positioned as a homework product, but as you will know with tutoring, homework tutoring, gap filling support, it's a sort of a funny Venn diagram of covering lots of different things.
It is. And sometimes we want to do homework and sometimes we really don't want to do homework. We want to know what's on their plate, but we don't necessarily want to give our session over to doing it with them.
Yes, exactly. I think that not wanting to do homework from a pupil's perspective is also a starting point for this product, because we wanted to make the feeling of doing the work outside of the classroom as positive and as safe as possible, because we know that maths can sometimes provoke anxiety with pupils and children, particularly when they're not in the safe space of a classroom with a teacher to support them. So a lot of the features that I'm going to talk through and you'll see are really designed to scaffold that learner in an environment that may not be as supportive as a classroom. But obviously, in the context of a tutoring session, you're going to have that friendly person next to you supporting as well. So hopefully it does both things. It supports the learner and it supports the tutor. So these are the problems. I'm sure these will resonate with all of you who have been in the classroom, who've been out of the classroom. The problems that we identified when we spoke to our network, our teachers. Homework basically just isn't done very well. It's poorly served by the resources that are available. Often it's a kind of last minute thing, so it's at the bottom of the to-do list for teachers. And the problem with that is it creates it's a horrible cycle of, if it's the last thing you do it badly, and if you do it badly, it doesn't land. And then if the kids aren't getting anything out of it as a teacher or a tutor, you kind of feel, well, what's the point of investing in that
There's so
space?
much in this. There's so much in this. There's also the experience of the parent.
Yes.
I as well as representing tutors, I also wear my mummy hat at all times. It's firmly welded, and I've learned with my own kids that you can sort of read the classroom by looking at what homework comes home. And so so in the same way that that teachers were so self-conscious during online schooling during COVID, because everything was seen at home, sending the right homework home is a really solid signal for parents, isn't it? That
Totally.
the teacher really has the child's interests in mind, and that it's not slapdash, and that it does make sense, and that it doesn't create tension at home. That word safe that you used early on, I think, is really, really resonant.
Yeah, and that's a lens that we apply to all of our products, to be honest. But I think it's particularly important when it's a home product. And that point about the kind of subliminal messages that you're giving as a school to the parent is really important.
Yeah.
And I think in the maths world in particular, you're going to have a whole range of confidence levels with maths. And a lot of parents, even if they feel quite confident teaching maths, they might not be confident knowing the way that maths is taught, that their children are currently using. So a lot of these mastery pedagogies that are flying around now that were not around when I was at school, and that wasn't so long ago. It's a fast-paced kind of environment for teachers and learners. And I think what we've tried to do here is make sure that there are features, which I'll show you in a second, that really give parents a quick snapshot of what's the maths that your child is doing. Again, for the tutor, what's the maths that's going on in the classroom that they can support with. Some really good examples and models for how to deploy it effectively with that familiar language. So one of the things that you'll see is that the White Rose collaboration means that the way that the questions are phrased, the images, they're really consistent with what the child, I need to say child, not pupil. The child is seen in the classroom will be the same thing that they see in the home experience, whether it's a tutor or a homework.
I've got a story about that. So Odette, my business partner, and I were in one of the shows last year. Maybe it was the Schools and Academies, and White Rose was exhibiting there, and they just launched their little turtle teddy, Tiny. So of course we took one or two in our bags home. And Odette's little boy is now just turned 6, and he saw Tiny, and he said, "That's Tiny. He's in my classroom." And he picked up the workbooks that we brought home as well. And he and Tiny sat all night, finished far too long, working through the workbooks because of that joined up experience. So that recognition piece, I think, is really, really solid.
Brilliant. And you will see Tiny in this product. We love Tiny. I've got 2 boys, one of whom is in year 1 and has a practice journal. He loves it. He loves Tiny. So again, it's that familiarity and that fun element. I've put this in here just because I'm a bit of a geek and a teacher, and the EEF is something that as a leader in schools, we look to as a source of authority and reassurance. This is a really important element of the product, which is that the research shows that effective out of class provision is where what the learner is experiencing is aligned to what they've done in the classroom. So
I think
that's a
right.
really
I was going to ask you exactly this. So this is the Education Endowment Foundation's Teaching and Learning Toolkit,
yeah,
which is honestly, look it up and save it to your bookmarks. It is the best and most accessible piece of evidence-based research for tutors, for teachers and tutors. And I think it's really relevant here because there's not much evidence behind the value of primary school homework, but that may well be because of the quality. Is that the point that you're making?
absolutely, exactly. The nuance there is that homework can be really effective because it's another point in time in the learning journey of a child where they're practicing. So that's why we call it practice journals. There's another opportunity to practice those skills, take that knowledge from your short-term memory, put it in your long-term memory. But that only happens if it's knowledge that is resonant with what's gone on in the classroom. So homework can be really impactful. Tutoring obviously can be really impactful, but it's only impactful if it's done well and it's that alignment to what's happening in the classroom that gives it that. If it's just random stuff that you're chucking out, if it's a worksheet here, a worksheet there, it might feel good in the moment, but it's not going to have that long-term impact.
Yeah, and I think what's lovely there is that that sort of joined up approach, but then leaving us space to be creative beyond that. So this is a solid grounding. Yeah,
Absolutely.
awesome.
Right. I'm going to get stuck into the product here. So
No,
that was the problem. That's the
great,
issue. That's what we're trying to
great.
solve.
Yeah.
Practice journals are the solution. We believe they're the solution.
Feedback, the covers are pretty and that helps.
They're pretty. And again, I mean, they're pretty because we like things that are pretty, but they're also pretty because it's that sense of safety, that
Yeah.
psychological safety I go on about all the time. The gridded front is meant to be designed so that kids can doodle on it. So there's this idea
Yes.
of doodliness that you can take
Yes.
ownership of your practice journal and it's yours.
We should get
Um,
Tom Gates to do something with you next. The doodle.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, it is a very similar kind of aesthetic, isn't it? So the key kind of product features that I want to call out. It's one book per year group, so it's super simple. If you're a year one child, you've got a year one practice journal. It's written by the White Rose authors, so you can be reassured that if your child is in a White Rose school, which to be honest, most kids will be, the content, the pitch, the difficulty, and the style is exactly what the people would have experienced in the classroom. We've made sure that all of the visual scaffolds, the language, the representations are really familiar. So when that pupil comes to the environment outside of the classroom, they're not seeing new things. It's all things they've seen before, and they're building their knowledge and they're practicing what they've learned with the support of a tutor.
So that's really key, isn't it? Because we also know, in terms of what the evidence tells us, is that you should never give a child something new to do for homework, should you? You should only be using it for reinforcement.
Totally, and actually, I think homework is a really valuable part of the picture. But like we've been saying, it's got to be used productively and well. And any chance that kids have to practice is really useful. So this is where the PJs come in. I'll show you in a second some examples of the spreads. A really key one is the knowledge organizer, and what we were
Agreed.
saying earlier about parents having just a quick snapshot of exactly what their child is going to be learning, the structures and representations that it's going to be taught through, some worked examples, but nothing really heavy, really simple, really child friendly, that even the child themselves could look at and benefit from. That sits at the start of every topic. So at the start of every kind of 3 or 4 weeks, you've got that knowledge organizer, which gives you everything you need as a parent to know, okay, I know exactly what's going on here. They're doing fractions and it's going to look a bit like this. That's a feature that White Rose themselves have said we've always wanted to include in our products, but just haven't got round to. So it's the only place
You push it forward.
but it was a really obvious thing for that
Yeah.
parent space or that tutor space. It's just that really quick one pager. And I'll show you an example of what those look like. What we've tried to do is make the homework experience do several things. The main focus is practice. So it's just that I always call it airtime. Give your kids the airtime to do the questions, get it from that short-term memory, get it in your long-term memory. So the bulk of the questions are fluency practice.
Great.
But there's a section, so they're always 3 pages, 2 pages of your practice, and then the third page is a mixture of different activities, some which won't involve any writing, and they'll encourage the child to go out into the home and find something, like go and find a label on a packet in your pantry that has a decimal in it. Fun things like that that I know that schools want to get kids to be doing. It's that real world maths thing, but it's actually really hard for teachers to think up those activities on the spot and then to be
A
good.
whole range of questions for you, Will.
I know, I bet. And I'll show you some examples of them, so it might be better for that little section to ask them then. And then you can see exactly what I mean. But there's a kind of a flow of different types of those third page activities.
Got
They're
it.
designed to encourage talk, they're designed to contextualize the maths, and they're designed to be really fun. And they're
Awesome.
sort of optional as well. So you could just do the fluency questions and you could just do that practice if that was what your focus needed to be. The coherence thing is more of a kind of schools thing, and it's like, if you're a school leader and you need a homework solution, just buy this because it sort of sorts it out and you don't really have to think. So that's an appealing thing for your SLT and your head teachers. I
Sorry,
like this.
let's say that again, because that's really, really important. If you're looking for coherence, this is a really lovely solution because they've got it in school and they'll have it at home. And you've just said it with a school leader hat on, and I completely relate. But we also know that for the tutor to be aligned with the school, there's a ton of evidence to say that the closer that we're aligned with what's happening in the school, the better off the children are.
Exactly. That coherence kind of goes lots of different ways. It's coherence in the school, it's coherence with school and home.
That's right.
It's all
So
about that
for a tutor
limiting
to
the
show up,
noise.
that's right, for the bandwidth. So for a tutor to show up and say, I'd love your child to work through this in between our sessions, would say, oh, this is familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. And chances are 9 times out of 10, because we know that white roses in most primary schools, the child that you're tutoring will be at a white rose school, so they will be following this this pathway. The last little point here before I get into some spreads is about year 6, and because I'm mainly a year 6 teacher, so that period of SATs build up, you can use these for SATs practice. The summer term content, which is typically after you've done your SATs, we've made sure that the practice questions in there are designed to prepare kids for year 7. So there's a kind of transition element there, which could be really powerful if you're tutoring a 10 or an 11-year-old, 11-year-old probably, who's finished their SATs and wants to be on the front foot for year 7. So there's some really good resources there. Just worth saying as well that PJs go right up to year 9. So you could even invest in a year 7 copy and you could start looking at that and getting your tutee up to speed with some of that content, because there is a kind of crossover and quite a lot of the early year 7 stuff is kind of consolidation of year 6.
Oh gosh, these are all the words out of my mouth. But actually, if you don't mind, since you really speak the language, let's unpick some of those things. Let's unpick fluency. Let's unpick transitions, and let's unpick the pedagogy that underpins that. Would that be all right with you?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. So you're telling us, did you want to show us a page with spreads? Is that going to
Do
show
you,
us
do you know what?
practice?
I think
Let's
if
do
I show
that.
you the product and then some
Yeah.
of those points, like the fluency point, you can potentially see that actually on the
Well,
page. So
yeah, I mean, what I want you to do is to teach us some maths education at the same time. I don't mind.
right, no pressure. Okay. Before I just get to some of the actual questions, this is what I was saying in terms of the knowledge organizers. So
Lovely.
these are some knowledge organizers from different year groups. Again, it's that one page. You can see some of the white rose characters on there who are introducing the topic to come. They're showing how it's going to be taught, and they're introducing some of the key language features and the way that the questions will be set out. So again, for me as a dad, when I want to know what my kid's doing, I can just look at that and go, okay, we're on, well, he's in year 1, so it's like mainly place value stuff. So I can see exactly what he's doing. I can see how he's doing it. And if I've got time, I can dip in and give him some support using the right language and not making it worse, which is often what a lot of parents get a bit worried about.
They do worry about making it worse. So there's a lot, there's a lot here, isn't there? So CPA, yeah. So concrete, pictorial, and abstract is a foundational idea in teaching maths in ways that doesn't get too scary for kids. So we talk about dyscalculia and maths anxiety as children who are struggling with maths, either because they have dyscalculia, which is the equivalent of dyslexia, but for number. But we also know that if we can keep maths as concrete as possible for as long as possible, then children build a strong sense of number, which they can then build out to understanding abstract questions and real life questions. So, for example, if we look at the place value chart here with decimals in the bottom right, what you're showing us here is counters that the class might actually be using those counters and counting pencils to work out what division is, and grouping those pencils is again the way that we teach in the classroom. There will be in the classroom things like tens frames. So if you look in the top left, those red circles and blue circles, the children will be playing with those in the classroom. And the more that you can have those hands-on tools as a tutor, to reinforce what this learning looks like, the better. So concrete would be the actual tools. Pictorial are these lovely pictures here that are so easy to understand. And then the abstract would be the little explainers here with the children asking a question and talking about the mathematics rather than modeling it. So this is something that children are comfortable with, and that the adults have to become comfortable with also, parents and tutors, to be able to help them to move forward.
Perfect. Perfectly explained. And I would definitely say if you're a tutor and you're with a 5 or 6-year-old and you're looking at some place value, get your egg box out, get your counters out. You can create those tens frames really easily, and it reinforces. This is obviously, it's a book, so it's going to be mainly pictorial, but you can supplement that process of really embedding the conceptual understanding through the concrete. And things like 10 frames are really easy to do. You can do them in an egg box, you can do them in all sorts of ways, counters, things like that. Numicon is also an excellent way of showing that too, which we
Numicon
publish.
is an excellent way, yeah. Oh, lovely. Let's talk about Numicon next time.
Yeah,
Becky,
absolutely.
Great.
Right. So that's knowledge organizers. Let me go to the next page. Yeah, you've picked those things out. So let's remember. So this is exactly what you would find in the actual White Rose lesson progression. So there's always a let's remember feature at the start of every lesson, which is basically that way of trying to remind the pupil of things they might have learned yesterday, something they've learned last week, and then something they might have learned last term. So it's that spiraling of knowledge so that you're constantly getting the pupil to retrieve the things that they've known before. So that's a feature of the White Rose lesson sequence. So that's why it's a feature of the homework.
Okay. Sorry, hold on. So you mentioned the word retrieve. So retrieval practice means that you pull up knowledge that the children have accessed a while ago, so that you don't leave it to stagnate. But actually what really happens is that the more you ask children to remember learning, the better embedded it becomes in their long-term memory, and therefore the easier it is for them to recall next time. So by having this spiral approach, rather than what we've seen traditionally, which would be a block approach, by coming back to that old learning again and again, what we do is we keep it fresh in children's minds, and we enable them to make connections, so that as the spiral continues and repeats, they've got access to the original, to the prior learning, so that they can build on it. So what we're doing is we're building out an architecture, conceptual architecture in the child's mind, which makes a massive difference to outcomes.
Yep, precisely. And then you can see, so this is from a primary practice journal, but you've got those 4 questions at the start, which is that retrieval element. And then the let's practice part is essentially what this product is, and that's why it's called a practice journal. It's picking up the key bits of knowledge that the child is likely to have learnt in that week's block in the classroom.
That word likely was a whole area to itself that we'll go in a second. I will come back to that.
Yeah, I mean, we can't know exactly the order that schools will teach certain things, but we do know that a lot of schools are teaching the White Rose curriculum. They will be following that sequence of what goes in the autumn term, what goes in the spring term. They are likely to move things around, but 9 times out of 10, around the autumn term in most year groups, you're probably doing some sort of place value or some sort of for operations, and that is what you will find in the practice journals as well. So as a tutor, you might have to kind of go, delve a little bit into the exact thing that your tutee might have done in that week, but it won't take you long to find out what they've done, and it'll be really easy to match it to the exercises that are in the practice journals. And once you found that, you'll find that there's some fantastic questions that are based on fluency. So it's those core skills that child is likely to have learnt that week. It's not every single thing, because it's impossible to do all of that in 3 pages. It's the most important things, those key bits of practice that are going to root that child's understanding against that topic. So if it's fractions, it's what are the key things that child needs to practice so that they really get fractions. And the decisions about what those things are conceptually have been taken by the White Rose authors, by the team that write the White Rose curriculum. So it's not random, it's not sort of best guess, it's expert driven decisions about what that child would best practice for that week.
Very nice. So if I was teaching a year
which I
4
think
student,
is a key feature of this product, because you'll get
No, I have a lag.
Sorry, go for it.
Please go
Oh
ahead.
no.
I have a lag on my Wi-Fi.
Yeah, because you will find, I mean, there's nothing to stop any publisher publishing things that follow the White Rose sequence. That's just a sequence you can look at, you can download. But this is the only product that's actually written by the White Rose authors and is endorsed by White Rose. So that absolute alignment and care against the White Rose curriculum, which is the most popular, the best curriculum in the UK, you will only find it in this product.
So just to reiterate that, I did a lot of shopping around for maths curricula before I chose White Rose for my school. And even the other maths mastery products are not as accessible as White Rose. But the older school tools do not work as well as this at all. Now, what I wanted to suggest was, though, Will, if I was tutoring a year 4 student who had gaps in their knowledge, either because they hadn't accessed learning, they'd been absent, or is my sound off? Has Will frozen, or is it me, Becky?
I'm really sorry, Julia. It's got very laggy. I'm not sure if that's me or it might be me.
It's me. It's my Wi-Fi. It's gone mad this week. Let me just see if I can switch to a hotspot. I'll leave you to continue.
Okay, you've come back now, but yeah, maybe if you can see if there's something a little bit more stable. So yeah, this is exactly what we've talked through, really. So this is the features that we discussed. This is the Let's Remember bit. Last week, 2 weeks ago, 3 to 4 weeks ago, those are the different questions that you'll see in the Let's Remember part, and then last term. These are the Let's Practice questions. Again, I've explained this, but this is some more examples of what you will find in the Let's Practice part. So mixed questions on the content taught for that week. Again, if you're a tutor, you might have to do a bit of playing around. Again, familiar representations. You can see in the example here that we've got some Numicon shapes in there, which are ubiquitous really in classrooms, but you've got counters, you've got dice, all of the things that the kids will be familiar with. There's a mixture of fluency and problem solving, but again, we've thought really hard about what does a pupil, a child outside of the classroom, what do they need? What's the best use of that time? Is giving them loads of really challenging, difficult problem solving questions going to be a helpful thing for them to do when they might not have that familiar scaffold? Possibly not. So there's a weighting in these questions towards fluency, but the demand does ramp up and there are some problem solve questions as well. Again, there are characters who kind of give little helpful hints. So where we felt that there might need to be a little bit of a kind of nudge in a certain direction, you'll see the familiar White Rose characters giving that. I love this feature, and it took quite a bit of thinking in the editorial team. And I'll explain why it's so good. It's not just fun to do, and when we did our trialing, all of the kids that did the crack the code, they loved it because it's just fun to crack a code. The point about the crack the code is when you're in an environment where you don't necessarily have a teacher, obviously a tutor will be there and wouldn't necessarily like the learner would have that scaffold. This is to give the learner or the parent a kind of overview of, are you on the right lines? Okay, so once they've answered all of the questions, the boxes that are highlighted green in this case.
Is this a clever way of marking your paper?
Yes, it's a self-marking skill. You will find all of the answers via a QR code on the inside cover. So the parent can literally find every single answer. So there's no worries about that. But for the pupil who doesn't want to, we didn't want pupils to look at the answers in the book and potentially cheat. Yeah. But we wanted them to get a sense of, am I on the right lines? The parent who might not understand the maths in a huge amount of detail, is their child on the right lines without having to do the maths? So basically, if you transfer some of the answers to the questions into the box in the crack the code box, there's a little bit of kind of working out what does this number equate to in terms of this letter. It will spell out a word. And I think we've got an example. There you go. So these are some answers to some questions. and then it will
Yes,
generate
you. Oh,
a mathsy
lovely.
word.
And
And
then you can
then you
explain
kind
it.
of know if I've got a word that is a word, if I've got a word that makes sense, that's a maths word, I know that I've pretty much got most of them right, which is I think what the learners need to feel when they're doing their maths, they need to feel successful, they need to feel positive. Obviously, if it's a jumble of letters and it's not right, that's a bit of a clue to seek a bit of help. That's where the tutor again can support. That's where the parent might support. When the teachers come to mark the practice journals in a school context, they can just flick through and they can see quite quickly if the learners have got it right without necessarily marking everything. So it does a lot of things in quite a fun way. And
Absolutely wonderful. And
I've
you
not
didn't
seen
even
things
use
like that.
AI for it.
No, no, no. To
It
be
was just
honest,
a good idea.
it was a good idea. And I mean, it's not that hard to do, but it did require a little bit of creative thinking on our team.
Love
So
it.
credit to them for doing that. Yeah, this is what when I described a little bit the structure of each week, you've got 3
I must
pages.
share with you, Will, that it's such a joy to speak to the person who makes the textbook. Because I always remember as a child finding a typo in a textbook or thinking about the people who had conjured up these maths questions. And it's so nice to speak to the people who actually, do you know what I mean?
They are real people. They do exist.
And
They
they're,
have
they're not just there for torture.
well, exactly. And they are
Yeah.
people that know what teaching is and they've got their own children and they understand
And
hopefully as best
actually,
they can.
when I was having trouble with my Wi-Fi before, you mentioned that hands-on resources are ubiquitous in classes nowadays, and that makes
Yeah.
me so happy to hear you say that because, 10 years ago that was not true, and so we should be really proud of that progress. And White Rose probably take a lot of credit for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That idea of the CPA, the concrete pictorial abstract, is much more understood.
Mm.
And particularly actually higher up the school in Key Stage 2, you will find physical manipulatives in the
That's right.
classroom. Still not everywhere, still not completely used the best way that they could be, but that's a big part of a good maths education now, and that's becoming more widespread.
And
And
not
just a
just for the ones who struggle, and not
no,
just for when they struggle.
absolutely, and a little plug for some products that are in the pipeline.
Yes.
We've looked at Numicon, which is a product that we've sold for years and is amazing. It's been completely refreshed in line with all of the best new pedagogy, the CPA approach, mastery, and we've got some really exciting things to come in the spring. But
Wow.
that's for later probably.
If you want to send me a box to just play with for you, that'd be fine.
Yeah, and that the beauty of Numicon is you can literally just get it out and play with it and you're doing maths, and that's
Yeah.
what's lovely about it. And I would encourage every tutor out there to have a box of Numicon because it does a million
Agreed.
different things. I did a
And
bit of
invest in a
CP.
good box because the box dies
Yeah,
way
yeah.
before the tools.
Well, and you need a good amount of Numicon
You do.
to really play with it.
Yeah.
And you need more than just the 1 to 10. You need a few sets of the 1 to 10. Okay, back to PJ. So this is an example of some of those slightly more creative type questions. And again, when we thought about this in schools, we thought they're going to want to make sure that the kids have got that fluency, that automaticity in terms of the core skill. So the bulk of the questions are around those fluency. But then you've got this page where you could set it as an optional, you could set it as an extension. There's a mixture of things that are either just problem solving, there's a mixture of things that are encouraging them to go out and actually talk to people at their home and find things. Part of this, again, with my head teacher's hat on, how can we encourage greater parent-home links and participation and get the parents actually involved in the learning a bit more? And that was how we saw that through this product in this feature.
Well, let's
Which I
just
really
grab
like.
onto that again because, again, there's a lot of evidence for parental involvement affecting outcomes.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to admit that because I don't really get involved in my kids' homework, except my little one, my 8-year-old, who's the first silver who's ever done homework. I'm ashamed to tell you. So getting parents involved in homework is probably a really clever thing to do. And this is not about box ticking in the slightest. It's actually about signaling to children how important their education is. It's about getting the parents on board with that learning process. And sometimes, and this is really in service of tutors, it's actually getting the parent to experience their child as a learner, which otherwise they don't have a chance to do. you know, parents often find that they can go weeks and weeks just sort of processing their children, feeding them and putting them to bed, getting them up and feeding them again and shipping them off. And actually sitting down and engaging with your child through a learning process can be very, very healthy.
Absolutely. Just being a model, you know, I'm excited and curious about maths. And, you know, if you're a mum or a dad, you're the hero to your child, hopefully. So if you're modeling that lovely excitement about maths, your child is going to want to do the same. So
Spoken like a maths bod, Will. Spoken like a maths bod.
you'll have to ask my kids if they actually do
It's all right. I feel the
see
same
it
about
that
you
way. I
too.
don't know.
I actually
Um,
really resonate with what you just said there, Julia, because yeah, my son started school in September, and it's great, but he doesn't tell me anything about his day. So actually, some of the best
yeah.
conversations I have with him are when we're sort of talking about phonics or maths.
Oh,
He's actually interested in it, so I can actually get him to talk because he wants to talk about it. So yeah, sorry, that was my little input. Yeah,
I'm so happy for you, Becky, that he wants to talk about it. Long may that last.
yeah, fingers crossed.
And we found that actually the kids, when they sit down with the PJs, they love doing them. They
Mm.
like I know that sounds
Yeah.
incredible, but they like sitting down with them. They're fun. It becomes a positive experience rather than that whole, you know,
I
pulling
don't think
teeth to
it
get
sounds
kids to do things.
incredible. I think it sounds credible, because most of the reason why kids hate homework is when it doesn't make sense, or they can't do it, or they're worried
Yeah.
that the teacher's going to shout at them, or all of those things that are born of that list of questions that you had right at the beginning. So my 8-year-old, who is the first one who's ever done homework in my house, it feels in control of her homework, and I can see it on her. And so that really resonates with me here.
Yeah, and that's that alignment, because it's not going to be strange, new, weird things like you say, the learner thinks they can't do. They feel safe because it's expected work that they have practiced already. Right, I'm going to whiz through. Is it helpful to kind of show some more examples? Because these are the features that I think this is a really
Well,
nice one.
oh
Or do
yes,
you want to
please,
just talk
please.
more generally? I don't mind.
I do want to I want to learn lots, but I want to actually drill down into how a tutor will use this, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Because to me, you've got two opportunities here. Either you've got the wraparound approach, where where the tutor gives homework basically, or the tutor gives prep work. Or you've got the tutor using this as a jumping off point. Or you've got the tutor saying, this is what's coming home from school. The school is using PJ. And so I'm going to use it as a place to check in to see where they're up to. And then I think there's one more, which is supporting struggling students. So picking up a year 2 book for a year 4 student and actually finding prerequisites. Do you want to unpack some of that for
Yeah,
us?
absolutely. And I think it depends really what your learner needs, and it depends your style of tutoring, how you like to deliver your session. I mean, you could just use these as a great bank of really good quality questions,
Mm-hmm.
and you could mix and match, and you could adapt it to, you know, the lesson structure of your tutoring sessions. Um, you know, I'm a big believer in, you know, teacher agency and trusting the teacher to know exactly how their learner needs to learn and adapting. But at the same time, this is a very, very clear flow of questions and resources that you could just pick up, and you could go, right, I need something on adding fractions with different denominators. I can find that really quickly for the year group of the child that I'm tutoring, and we can go through maybe 2 weeks worth. If you've got like an hour session, that's probably 2 weeks worth of the questions. I think if I'm going to be teaching that as a tutor, it gives you a really nice flow of, right, let's do a little bit of a starter, let's do some recap. You might then do a chunk of exposition and some practice questions. You could, like you say, get out your physical manipulatives that support that particular type of question, which would be very easy to know which ones apply to which questions, because it's just literally in the book. And then you might use some of the talk it out questions to have a discussion about one of the particular topics that you've been
I think that's
exploring.
exactly what I would do. I think what I would do would be, you know, so for example, my specialism is English. So although I'm a primary tutor, I always need tools to lean on in maths. And so that's probably what I would do. I'll probably use this as my basis and then build out sessions from this. And it's really lovely to hear that you would suggest that we would cover 2 weeks in 1 week, because that's a useful indicator for how tutors can cover more ground and actually help children to make progress faster. I'm thinking about online tutors, which
Yep.
of course, you know, it's the majority of secondary school tutoring is now online. I think it's not the same with primary yet, but this is a hands-on tool. This is a paper tool, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's yeah, and can't get away from that. It's
No,
designed to
no.
be in your hands. It's a writing workbook, so
Yeah.
it's either for the learner or the tutor to use the space in the book to show they're working and make a recording that can
I
then
have a
be
very simple
marked or
workaround to this problem that I've just
okay.
proposed, which is you just need 2 copies of the book, one for the tutor and one for the student, so that you're both following the same tool.
Yeah, and part of that ties into that ethos that we really wanted to kind of project around the product, which is ownership. You know, this is your
Yeah.
practice journal. You have it for a year. It's your thing. You put it in your book bag. You can doodle on the front if your school doesn't freak out about it. But it becomes your thing. You're proud of it. You know, you're seeing your progress because you can flick back to the work that you've done before. You can look forward. I mean, I think it's a great pre-teach tool because you can actually think as a tutor or just as a self-motivated learner, okay, I know that I've got this topic coming up in a couple of weeks. I can just read through the knowledge organizer. And it means that when I start in the classroom on that topic, I know some of the key words. I might have had a go at some of the questions. And again, it creates that nice feeling of being in control of the learning.
Yeah, I think your point about agency and about ownership is so, so important. Our lovely Jenna has just asked a question. Jenna, do you want to unmute and ask it? I was going there next. So I'm really, really glad that you are coming from the same place. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry for the background noise. I'll just move over a bit. Yeah, so I work a lot with young people who are home educated. That's my area of specialism. And I guess I'd really like to know how well this could translate for young people who are home educated, whether the tutor is the primary source of education or even where the tutor is the supplementary support. Because these are so in line with that classroom structure that it'd be interesting to have your thoughts on that parallel.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, and what we talk about a lot with different people that we talk to about this product. You know, it's a White Rose aligned product. We've done it in collaboration with White Rose, but maths is maths. And when you flick through the books, you got a block on fractions, got a block on place value. Like it's not the White Rose language of fractions. It's very ubiquitous in terms of the fundamental things that if you're a primary school pupil, you need to know to be able to be confident in maths. So it will support any curriculum. You might have to do a bit of moving around when you teach certain things because there's an order that's written into the books and it's printed in a certain order, and that doesn't always necessarily align if you're a home educator and you follow a slightly different approach. But I'm assuming that most home educated pupils will have to learn place value there, fractions, etc. So this will give you those questions, it will give you those activities, it will give you all of those things that would support that. I guess home educators, I mean, Jenna, you're the expert. I don't know much about home educators per se, but I imagine they probably look to certain approaches. They might be a Montessori approach. They might think about certain curricula that they like the look of, that they found that they would follow. And I guess it's for that person who's home educating to then think about what's the best additional resource that I could use. And like I would say, it's about thinking of the maths as the maths. You know, whatever curriculum you're using that's saying you've got to teach number bonds. Okay, well, there's number bonds support in the practice journals. It's not White Rose don't own number bonds. Do you know what I mean? It's flexible enough to be used in the right way, and we've tried to make it as clear as possible in that sense. And I guess your job, Jenna, as a tutor that specialises in supporting home educators, is I guess partly helping those home educators to know where to find the resources, what to teach potentially.
I think often one of the challenges for me as well is where I work sometimes with the local authorities, it entirely falls on me. And the local authorities don't always procure like the core White Rose programs that would be really, really useful. And I find sometimes that resources like these are amazing, but they align so closely with something else that it would be better utilized if it's in parallel with that, whether it's elements of it or as a whole. So that's really interesting to know. I also have a follow-up, if that's all right. So some of the young people I work with them because they've been out of school for a period of time and have missed a lot of education for various reasons. And so someone who is chronologically key stage 3 or 4 may be working at a key stage 1 or 2 level. And I really like the structure of these. I would probably myself put a sticker over the year group, but I'm just wondering how accessible or childlike or overly childlike might this feel to an older person chronologically?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the point about the labels, we've thought about that too, and thought about maybe covers that are year group agnostic, which might be something that we do. Obviously, the trade-off is for the people that need to know the year group, it's kind of important to have it on the front. I think the wider point about the way that the questions are written and how they'll feel to a learner that's learning outside of the year group that they should be in. It's the white rose imagery, it's the white rose presentation. There is a difference between Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. So the font size is bigger for Key Stage 1. There are fewer questions on a page. That in and of itself, I don't think is going to make it feel inappropriate for that learner. There are the characters that you'll see in the primary product that you wouldn't see in the secondary product. So there is a bit of difference there, but they're not so childlike. I mean, I wouldn't say that they're the most kind of babyish of what we could have gone with, and that's partly because we've used the white rose characters and they've trialed those characters, and those characters are the ones that you'll find in classrooms right up to year 6, from year 1 to year 6. So yeah, you're going to get, if there's a year 9 pupil working at a kind of Key Stage 1 level, that might feel different for them, but then I don't think overly so. And I think it's always down to the individual learner and what they need. And the main thing is that the representations are really clear, they're really structured. The maths is well thought through and well set out. I mean, if you open them, they just look really clear. And I think that's a big part of what learners need, especially when they're at home on their own or with a tutor. It's just got to feel not overwhelming. It's got to be clear. And I think that's what that learner would feel, rather than it's a bit babyish. That's not really something that we've come across, but I appreciate there's different scenarios, aren't there?
I've definitely seen that in school. I've seen that the tutors who are working with children don't want to put anything babyish in front of them. I would be interested to know whether in the printed books, do you have the year group at the bottom of each page? You sometimes see that in textbooks. Do you know if it comes out on these?
That is a very good question.
How many stickers does Jenna need is the question.
Minimal stickers. And if it is there, it's very small. I think there's a reference at the top of the page, just because that's how you navigate through the book.
I think it references the term that they're in and then the week of teaching that would be. But I guess as these have been published completely aligned to White Rose Maths, that is the White Rose programme. So there is a certain amount of coherence that has to be reflected in the PJs. So yeah, completely see your point about learners working at different levels.
Can I ask one more question then?
Yeah, we like your questions, Jenna.
Thank you. And do tell me to be quiet as well. I'm thinking as well about the variety of students. I know you mentioned earlier virtual versus in person. I'm also thinking about workbooks versus PDF versus working electronically side by side. One of the things we cut down on, first of all, overwhelm, because stacks of loose worksheets are just extremely overwhelming and really hard to manage and organize and stuff. Especially when you've got that for every single home education subject. I've got GCSE students at the moment who full range at home and stuff. Sometimes it's nice to not have so much printing and be a bit economical and environmentally friendly by working on an iPad or something. And I'm just thinking about the differences between printing off a single page, if there is a PDF version, or working digitally or working from a workbook, and whether there is much of a difference, whether they do exist, whether that could be my solution?
I mean, personally, I think having a workbook, having it all in one place is much nicer. Like you say, you don't have that stress of lots of random bits of paper. I think there's a power in being able to look back at the work you've done and feel that you've made progress. You can also go back and revisit things that you've forgotten a bit and you need to just have a recap on, and you can also look forward and see what's coming up. So it sort of helps you to organize in your brain, where am I on this learning journey? And I know that's a very teachery way to put it, but I think in a kind of in a subliminal basic way, learners, that makes them feel safe. I know where I'm at, I know where I'm going, and I know what I've done. And having that in all in one place is important. Totally appreciate that the ways that you might teach in a tutor context could involve some iPads. Maybe you've got your TTRS subscription to do some timetables, things like that. But in terms of the actual part of that teaching process where you're writing things down and you're working through, because that's always going to be a core part of what's expected from learners. They're always going to be expected to be able to form their numbers properly, show the working, write it out. And I feel like that's an important role that tutors play in supporting learners. So you might as well have it all in one book, all in one place, done for you, and not having that kind of explosion of papers that you mentioned, Julia.
Can I dive in, Will?
Yep.
I would also, well, firstly, TTRS is Times Tables Rock Stars, yes?
Probably shouldn't have
Yes?
mentioned them. I don't know why I did that.
No, that's fine.
Full
but
disclosure.
it's okay, but we don't, we try to explain acronyms here.
Yep.
So what I would love to also point out is that there is an element of taking pride in your work that you get to have when you can see that journey of learning, and that whether it's the maths that you do that with or something else, not everything has to be in an exercise book and a textbook and printed out and proper, but something does. Yeah, because something has to give them that experience of taking pride. So I would agree with you, certainly agree with you about printed sheets. And I think that point of being able to track your own learning and actually revise it is really, really relevant. One of the things that I noticed, Will, was that on page 1, the first section is called Remember. And I think as a learner, that would throw me off if I was learning this with a tutor in a home ed context, because for me, it's not remember. You're telling me that I know something that I haven't actually learned yet. And so that whole acquire piece that comes before that, I would suggest, Jenna, if it was me, I would introduce the concept first, what Will called exposition, and then I would open this book afterwards to actually give them the independent work. Does that sound right to you, Will?
Yeah, totally agree. And I think the advantage of working with a tutor is you have that mediation. So you have that person that can look at the content before it's going to be exposed to the learner. They can think about the individual needs of that learner that they will know really, really well, and they can adapt where necessary. I guess what this product does is it tries to give as much support and flexibility within that context to the tutor as possible.
I think so, yeah.
And that's a good example of if they haven't necessarily come across that content in the Let's Remember piece, that's for the tutor to maybe mediate, and then maybe the next session it will include the things that they've taught in the previous session, so it will kind of roll on from there. And
then there's something else that occurred to me based on Jenna's question. So we've been talking about the value of coherence throughout this conversation, and the fact that coherence reduces cognitive load. It means that it's just all a bit less overwhelming, right? The other side of that is flexibility and being able to do something new and different instead, and being able to bring out different resources. And Jenna, I hope you took the point that Will said that nobody owns maths, right? So this is a useful tool or structure or scaffold or guide or whatever you want to use it as, but it's not saying don't look at labels in your pantry. It's saying I'm going to make it so easy for you that you can spend the rest of your time making maths really stimulating and surprising. We've gone way beyond our 20 minutes.
No problem. I could talk about this all day. Don't worry. As you can probably tell.
You in again, because this has been a fantastic session. Will, I always close meetings on time. So if you want to give us a quick close up, and if Becky will just confirm what the discount code, what the discount is, we'll share the code in the community. That would be awesome.
Wow, that's a bit, I'm sorry, is that for me? Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
well,
my
you-
parting words really
Yes.
would be really proud of this product. I think you've just got to get hold of a copy. We've got digital inspection copies, which is kind of publisher speak for. You can go to a website and you can actually look at some online versions of the questions. And I think that's the best way to get a sense of them beyond this presentation. Questions are super clear. Some amazing features that support learning at home, whether it's for homework or as a tutor. A really valuable resource. I think the kind of overriding thing that we've talked about here is that feeling safe, getting the learners to enjoy doing maths, the alignment with the curriculum and giving them success. Because if you feel success, you feel good about maths, you're more likely to want to do it. And that's what this is all about, really. So I'm sure, Julia, if it's possible, maybe we could share in the chat, or Rebecca could share some links to the website that you can have a look at some of those inspection copies.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Becky and I will follow that up afterwards. Go ahead, Becky.
Yeah, no, I was just following on from Emma's point. Obviously, I will share with you the links to the digital inspection copies, so you can have a look through. And we have confirmation for a 40% discount for qualified tutor. So
40%?
Massive discount.
Yeah.
That's outrageous.
That's outrageous. I love it.
It's
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll get the code set up and then I'll share it with you, Julia.
Thank you so much. Will, would you mind just closing this share for a second so that I can thank you properly?
We should actually say the actual, they're £5 per copy. Is that's right, Will? Isn't it?
That was really
£4.99.
Yeah.
And if you're working on a larger scale, we do have packs of, well, they are class packs of 30, but potentially if you're owning a tutor company and supplying for more than multiple children, there are packs available. So
super. Okay, I'm just going to mute you because there's somebody on the phone behind you. It's, thank you. Will and Becky and Jenna, that session surprised me. I didn't realize we were going to have a deep dive into maths pedagogy, and I'm really chuffed that we had the chance to. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you for bringing your care and attention to tutors through Qualified Tutor. It means the world to us. Thank you for your very deep discount. If you want to meet more of the Oxford University Press team, you can do so at BET, Love Tutoring at BET next week. Our final session is The Big Hug. Helen Freeman from Oxford University Press, and I have co-created a really startling session to finish up with you. So whether you're joining us online or in person, please make sure that you're with us there on Friday morning. Preceding that session, we do have a champagne brunch, so I'm expecting it to be quite a bubbly workshop. Thank you so much again, Will and Becky. Thanks, Jenna. You're totally awesome. I'm happy for your students that they've got you to support them. And have a lovely and majorly restful weekend. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Julia. Bye.
More, Jenna. Bye.